the body, when given the proper ingredients and when we're not interfering with its self-healing, it will perform miracles for you every moment of the day.
Welcome to the Younger Than Yesterday podcast and the premier interview with SayerJi from GreenMedInfo. Sayer is one of the most advanced people in natural healing and how all of us can support our own body's ability to heal itself and literally get younger than yesterday. He shares information philosophically, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and practically on how we can take full responsibility for ourselves and really get a better quality of life.
But those who are listening who maybe are saddled with conditions that they don't feel that they can heal, the next step is...
So make sure to tune in. Thank you for investing your time today and look forward to your feedback on all the golden nuggets that are shared in this interview. So, hey, Sayer, how's it going? You've just been through quite a week of your life. Can you tell us a little bit about your Florida experience?
Sure, Ian. Great to be here. Well, actually, thankfully, I was in Miami and it was non-eventful, and we were all anticipating a catastrophic storm to hit. I have many friends and some family on the West Coast, and thankfully it spared most people other than the inconveniences of power outages and the stress of preparing. But I think the primary challenge for people was the feeling like it wasn't a natural event. And I think that's what really upset people the most. So, but we made it through.
Yeah, and the whole Helena, little hurricane that went up into North Carolina, was obviously constructed and not natural. And it was right after that. So you guys were thinking, oh boy, here we go. Because it's going from a 3 to a 4 to a 5 to a,
Yes, in fact, it went so rapidly from, I think, a 1 to a 5. It was a matter of 24 hours, I think, that it just is very difficult to wrap your head around that being a natural storm. And then given the history of other storms in the region, not really obeying the laws of nature, and with a lot of the research surfacing around the government's, long projects regarding manipulation of weather, I think it's actually been a really good experience for people to realize that, the climate change narrative is accurate. There is anthropogenic or human-caused climate change, but much of it is happening in a clandestine fashion by, some of our own governments, really. Yeah.
Right. And it goes back to the Wilhelm Reich revelations back in the 50s and early 60s, where he was absolutely affecting the weather in a really positive way by bringing rain in when there was a drought and using the Orgone energy. And he had that machine that the hoses went over into the pond, and then he guaranteed rainfall within 24 hours. He wouldn't even charge them for the work he was doing. And then they came and grabbed him, ended up throwing him in jail. And 2 days before he got out of jail, he died of cardiac arrest in his early 60s. It's like, yeah, right. So, and then they took all of his books and burnt all of his books out of every library in the streets from all the public libraries to say, hey, this is what we think of his work. Meanwhile, they've been using that technology ever since.
I didn't know about the specifics of the history because I knew of his work more through the lens of psychology and philosophy and understanding what he meant by Orgone. But now that I've had some time to comprehend this alternative view around, like what Tesla was studying with radiant energy and this notion that the ether has always existed and it was sort of exorcised from modern physics because of a number of reasons, one of which is that it provides so much power to those who know how to manipulate it. His devices actually make sense to me, and I think that they could change the weather, so that's fascinating. Thank you for sharing that.
And also change our body's physiology, because the Orgone generators, the layering of all the different substrates and the woods and the metals and then layering it out was phenomenal. I actually have the blueprints on that, on how to make that. I just haven't got around to it. I've shared it with many people. I'm not sure how many people have made it, but it's a bit of a challenge to really do it right. But you sit in that little booth. It's just the size, just a little bit larger than your body, and you're completely enclosed. And it's somehow drawing Orgone energy out of the ethers and putting it into your body. And he pointed out that even like a rainfall or a baby being born or a baby nursing or the, planting of a baby in a woman's womb, or for animals as well, it's all Orgone energy. And so orgasm tied into that, and that's where they faulted him. They said, oh, he's a sexual pervert. No, he wasn't. That was not his thing. He was just looking at the natural energies, but that was back when it was taboo even to mention the term genitals, right?
Yeah, exactly. Sort of Victorian vibes still. Yeah, I mean, that is a creative force. If you look at Hinduism, for example, there's such an honoring of that at the center of all creation. Even looking at the center of our own galaxy, it's like this creative, just miracle, right? Of everything just coming from that void into creation. So yeah, I guess sexuality has really been thrown under the bus for some time.
Yeah. You get any and every religion really points to a central creator, a central invisible power that spoke things into existence. And the spoken word has energy, and our words today, speaking to each other, are all full of energy. It's a vibrational energy that we have to hear with the vibration of our eardrum and the vibration of our vocal cords resonating in our chest. And, when you and I get together and talk, we always have this really amazing resonance that just correlates and it automatically happens without having to make it happen. It's just organic.
I love that because, I'm someone who's always been very interested in philosophy. And, when it comes to language, there's like the poetic or poetic language, which means poiesis, like hematopoiesis, if you're producing blood. It's a creative act. That's why, like spelling, casting spells, a word can kill or it can save a life energetically. But then you have this notion that language is just representational and symbolic. And it's just this very, eviscerated thing. And so what I love about conversations with you is that we have very similar grounded understanding. And when it comes to longevity, I mean, that's part of the conversation, is that our bodies are these incredible devices, if you will, technologies that we can activate in a certain way to create life force. And actually you can do things like reverse disease or even reverse aging. And that's an exciting prospect, I think, for most people who've been, really just misinformed about how the body works and what's possible.
Right. That's right. The term, you're going to etymology, the term realize, your real eyes or reality. And my friend Norman Cowell, he's like the granddaddy of ozone. He makes these ozone machines that are all tapped into different vibrational frequencies and light energies on top of the ozone. And you got to meet him. He's a fascinating guy. He lives in Woodland Hills, California. And he told me, he says, use the word reality. And he said, think about the term that means remember, redo. He said, it's really the allity. And so we're getting to the reality. So yeah, it all ties in. And you mentioned the aging of the body, which is accepted as normal, and there's nothing normal about that. We found out that the body should not be aging at the rate it is. People are dying between 75 and 85 average. Some die in their 30s, some make it to 100. But all of them, from what we have seen up to now, is they don't have a really great time the older they get after they're 85, if they live till 100. Mm-hmm. And what you and I have discovered, and you were one of the first people who I ran into who had the depth of knowledge around like you had done so much research, had been inspired from an early age, which we'll get into your story on how that happened. But it was the discovery that hold it. I think it's the opposite of what we're supposed to be doing. That the older you get, the better you should get. The more healthy you should become, the stronger, the more energy, the better brain power. Everything should be working better because you've had longer at practicing being a health practitioner on yourself.
That's true. And actually, I was just discussing this with you before the interview, which is that you're 15 years my senior, which means that you're my, so one of the people in my wisdom circle that I want to consult about the strategies that I myself have been so interested in implementing, and especially every day I get older. And a lot of the followers I have are actually within the 60s, 70s range. So they're a little bit older than me. I'm 52 now. And it was around my 40s that I started to really feel my body change, and some of the things I couldn't just, take for granted. I needed to learn about how to conserve my energy and obviously implement strategies that could give me that, first of all, feeling of being alive. To me, Joseph Campbell's done us all a great service by focusing on the fact that people aren't really looking for meaning in the way that we think, like, that's not the primary thing. It's really the experience of being alive. And that is where youth resides. Like, any grandmother, grandfather, or any father or mother knows that if you can't feel yourself in your body in a way that's playful and ecstatic, it's hard to play with children. It's more likely they're going to end up on an iPad and end up, having chronic, pain issues when they're like 15. So we actually have an obligation to stay youthful and to show the youth that actually you can be very functional. So one quick story is I just went to work out with my dear friend, Dr. Joel Bohemia, on my birthday here. Thankfully, the storm did not affect us the way we thought. He was here because in Naples, they were kind of got hit. And anyway, we worked out, and I'm very shy generally. I don't brag about my age or whatever. I'm like, if I have something that I'm good at. But he went ahead and he said, oh, it's his birthday today. He's 52. And I was like the fastest, most fit person in the class. And these are, Miami people. They're like young and buff and strong. And I was like, oh, wow, that is impressive. So my point is that as you age, you don't actually need to lose function. And the correlation between chronological age and biological age is just a correlation. And we have been, in many ways, led down the wrong path of thinking that age is a disease with all the pathologizing of the changes of life. You could look at, menopause. You can look at andropause. You could look at thinning, bone density. You could look at aging skin, for example, and they've all been targeted with multi-billion-dollar industries that ultimately the solution ends up accelerating your aging and making you dependent on, things that aren't actually helping you,
Right. Yeah, it's a psychological war. When we're little children, we see our grandparents get old and die, and then we become adults and we watch our parents get old and pass eventually. And it just says, well, now it's your turn. Well, actually, no, because that's what the whole entire thought patterns were promoted upon every single person on this earth. That when you're, like literally they say 40 is middle age. Really? Says who? What if it's 1/10 age? Are you open to that? How many people are open to the idea that the body can continually improve its health in every single category a little bit every day? And if you look at an analogy of a car driving down the road for 10 miles, for example, we're not talking about big change. 1 degree down or 1 degree up on an angle of a road, you can't even visibly see with your eyes. In fact, if you put it in neutral, the car won't even roll either way at just 1 degree incline or decline. But when you drive that car 10 miles, which is equivalent to like 10 years, it's 875 feet difference between the lower 1 degree and the upper 1 degree, like a skyscraper.
Wow.
So which would you like? Would you like to be going in the 1 degree down or the 1 degree up? Because you can't go, it's very difficult to go back and reverse things. Mm-hmm. Although you've had to do that. I had to do that at 46. I was like an 80-year-old and had 3 years left to live. And I'm like, what is the end of my life doing there? How did that get there? That didn't even make sense, right?
Yeah, your story is amazing because it just illustrates that if the soul is meant to be here to do things, the body will really collaborate well. It's not the way people think is that we have this body first and foremost. And my philosophy professor, the great American philosopher Bruce Wilshire, used to say this, is that people generally think that consciousness is to the brain what urine is to the kidneys. It's just some excreta, couple sparks. No one understands why it works. It's just we're meat suits and we have this little thing called brain activity, and that's all we are. It's not like that. It's the opposite. We're like souls, and we have actually oversouls that are just so immense in their ability to manifest conditions, including our own body. And then the karmic or dharmic scenario of us being in this plane together right now, doing this work in this incredible moment in history, it's just a miracle. And once we start to access the reality of the miracle of our existence and start to live life where you wake up every day, this is what I do, Ian, is I wake up and I, thank God for the fact that I have another day to be alive. And that is my ongoing gratitude for the miracle of my body. And then I want to use it to the best of my ability, and which could even include trying to have a day of relaxing. That takes effort for me, right? I'm sure you're an overachiever too. And the people listening, just chilling out is like a miraculous effort these days, and not being overloaded with information that causes dis-ease. So I'd say, what your story tells me about is about the miracle of the fact that our age is really determined by our attitude, our desire to be here, whether we feel we deserve to be here and have perfect health. Like, these are the elements of life that are, really deprioritized because the medical industrial establishment, which is a social engineering operation, wants us to really focus on things like, oh, my cholesterol results came back, and oh my gosh, it's a little bit above what my doctor says I need to have, so I need to up my drug. And this is their life. I mean, this is like how people are living while it's accelerating their demise, and their doctors are congratulating them, and they're like little toddlers, like, oh my gosh, and my numbers are up. It's just so sad,
Right. Yeah, it comes back to the philosophical side of why are you here to start with? What is your purpose? Why are humans on this earth? And as we get older, we start to learn more the why. And the more we get the real why, the more we want to stay here. Whereas other people get to the point where they're so uptight with their life and so many challenges and so much suffering has gone on, and they think, and then they look at the people who are older suffering even more. They literally don't even want to touch their feet to the ground sometimes out of their bed. Whereas it's the exact opposite. What our discovery has been is that we're here, number one, to serve God by serving each other, love God by loving each other, really love people, not with some agenda. Yeah. And then also experience the attributes, because we're given a body that's super fragile that needs to be healed. So God expressing his healing power could not be appreciated unless we were broken or needed healing. Just like if we were in a perilous position and we needed to be saved out of that position, then, God's attribute of a savior, of a provider, of a protector. Because if you don't get protection, what's the point of being provided? So we're here to experience all those attributes that we could never experience. Could you imagine if you had a body right now, Sayer, that couldn't be harmed under any circumstance, could never age, could never die, could never be broken, right? You would have perfect memory. Everything was always just perfect. You would never be able to comprehend or appreciate or even apprehend those attributes that are being expressed to us, because who gave you your body? Where did it come from? Were you charged for that? Was there a cash register with a credit card? Hey man, you got to pay for that, right? Mm-hmm. Who gave you your talent? Who gave you your intellectual level? Who gave you your geographical positioning? Who gave you the family you were born into? Who owns your body, by the way?
Yeah, great questions. Well, these are the base. I was actually a student of existentialism in college, because that's all you professionally do, right? You sit back, and you're fortunate enough to have, parents that bankrolled your, academic experience. I was just basically put in a position where this is what I was supposed to do, because that's what was most interesting to me. And it's still the most fundamental set of questions that if we don't consciously have an answer for, we definitely have one through our behaviors or our self-limiting beliefs. So I think it's profound what you're asking, because having a body means we have to actually care for it, like our own mothers showed us how to do. But now we're individuals, we're adults. And if you don't have that priority, which I struggle with, as you know, Ian, I'm an activist as well, which is sometimes looking like being in a battlefield of information, mm-hmm. And it's not a really great place to be in often, but I feel like I'm doing that to protect myself, my children, my people. But the other side of it is I can't sustain it very long. Sometimes I'll get sick, or I'll have an injury, or I'll just feel depressed, and I'll realize, wow, I've just gone way too far in that direction. I have to give myself the rest and the care that is the, primary commitment I have to being able to continue forward. And that's why this topic is really a great one, because it's one that we can all, implement into our lives on a daily basis. It's not some abstract concept. It's like, how do we maintain our longevity? How do we reverse biological age? And if you haven't heard about that before, that's actually an exciting topic, because it is possible to do that. And science is now confirming it. So, but thank you for bringing this up. The fundamental question around being grateful and taking care of the gifts that we've been given, and then using them and sharing them. That's really the purpose of life, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, it's a real stewardship thing, because we don't really own our bodies, or we wouldn't have them taken away from us. And so you, in your universe, you, Sayer, are the asset. And your body is your number one asset above all other assets, as far as the physical world is concerned. Because your body is attached to everything that has a signature that's on a document that says that you're responsible for whatever it may be. So whatever level of wealth you've been given, and the true wealth is knowledge and wisdom. It's not money and material goods and real estate. Those are all fine. But the real wealth is to have the knowledge and also have a healthy body. And the one thing I had to learn the hard way is that I had to stop entirely giving responsibility to other people to manage my body and help me. I had to stop blaming everybody and everything, including myself, and wake up and go, time to take responsibility, Sonny, because you're going to lose your body because you don't know what you're doing. And the doctors don't know what they're doing when it comes to these disease things and the symptoms. Doctors really know what they're doing when it comes to triage, putting the body back together from a car accident. Those types of things are absolutely phenomenal. Like, thank God that's there. But the other side of that is the guessing game, and then the dumbing down of the medical world, where a doctor's job is one thing. A doctor's job is truly one thing: to extend death as long as possible. That's their job. Mm-hmm. And to hopefully that person will go a taper off after 65, so they're not a burden on the system, because everybody got convinced they're supposed to retire. Like, who told people, what the heck is, I don't even know what retirement is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Wow. I mean, you nailed it. Taking responsibility for one's life and one's health especially is the fundamental empowering step to embrace some of the miracles we were talking about. Because if you can't do that, or when you do that is another way of putting it, then you realize that everything that ails you, everything that you feel victim over, is completely within your control, because you co-created it. And you might even say actually created it, meaning, right. So that's where, once you realize that, when you wake up and you're an adult finally, I'm a good example, Ian. Listen, like, I was born into the world. My story is really being a traumatized infant that was born into literally scenarios that, like, you can't make up. Like, I was a very sick child in Germany, and I literally was at a hospital in Dortmund where I was being experimented on by ex-Nazi medical scientists. They literally were still part of the lineage of that hospital. Mm-hmm. And, like, I remember the children, I was a kindergartner at the time, screaming Polizei, Polizei in these rooms, because they were going to be brought in these gurneys and injected with weird things. Like, I went to a nightmare as a child. But recently I've had to kind of look back and be like, wow, my soul chose those experiences. And who's to know that I wasn't, like, on the other side of the equation in some Spanish Inquisition torturing some other person in a past life. Like, that's where I think the soul's journey creates experiences that you need in order to become whole again, to realize the consequences of your actions, or to prepare me for the war that I've been in terms of getting information out that they say is now, makes me a domestic terrorist because I believe in natural medicine. Like, that's literally what my government has defined certain of my actions over. So I've had to go through the fire to become the person. I'm like, who cares? I'm just going to do it anyway, like, because I'm here to fight for that. So anyway, so taking full responsibility of your story, because I got tons of wounds, I can say, oh man, that wasn't me. They did that to me, is really the key to then being able to say, well, I'm going to create incredible health from this point onward, or abundance, which is another form of it, as you're saying. So that's where I can speak a good game like right now. I'm not saying I live this way every day because I get triggered all the time, right? I drop orange juice, in the morning when I'm trying to prepare my kids' lunch, and it's like, oh, it's just so frustrating. But it's how you handle those little things, and then over time, with all that effort, you end up developing incredible resilience, and then things starts to flow in your life, and you're like, wow. Yeah, God, the Creator, is helping to take care of these things because I'm committed to these values we're speaking of. So radical responsibility is essential for healing from anything in your life,
Yeah, absolutely. I woke up one morning just early on when I was really, really sick, and I had this huge tumor and heart disease and all this stuff that was going to end my life in about 36 months. And I woke up one morning with this gut instinct knowledge that I'd never had before, where I realized that there was the highest level information available on the earth somewhere, and that there were people on the earth who had basically dedicated their life to research, say it was brain health or gut health or respiratory or circulatory or endocrine system or autonomic or whatever system that you want to talk about, because all the systems work in synergy, but each person had done their massive deep study in that particular realm. And that if I could meet them, if I could be led to them, I would be very interested in that, because I was done with the doctors. I had every doctor guessing all the way up to specialists in Toronto, where they're supposed to be some of the best doctors in the world. And healthcare, so-called, is free. It's just sick care. It's no more free than flag kite. But they say, it's free, but it's a social system, so it's not free. But I just knew, and then I realized that I could never find those people. There's no way. I mean, how are you going to find that people who have the top level knowledge in each category? You can't find them. You could have given me $10 trillion. I wouldn't have found them. And so when I realized that, I had to make a request. I said, I'm asking to be led. If you could lead me to these people, I'm not telling you have to. I'm just asking a favor. If I could find favor and grace to be led to meet those people, I will do whatever it takes. And that's a pretty daunting thing to say to yourself, because you don't know what's going to be required of you.
Yeah.
And then I realized, okay, I better qualify it. I'm willing to suffer at whatever level I have to suffer. I'm willing to spend as much time, energy, and money as required. I'm willing to have as much fun as is required, right? I'm no longer going to discriminate against another person for the rest of my life, because I realized that my social conditioning was very discriminatory. In other words, I didn't like anyone who wasn't like me. I was like, well, that's toxic. What if somebody who's totally the opposite of what I think is cool has a golden nugget? What am I going to do about that? So then I realized I was super prejudiced. I was a super know-it-all. I did, and I had to get rid of everything I knew in order to receive information. And it's like, whatever it takes. Okay, well, let's see. It's like, I'm being watched. Okay, we've given him this information. We're going to lead him to one person. Let's see how he reacts.
Wow. That's an incredible story. And it's like, I think, an opportunity for everyone to look at their conditions, their diseases through a new lens, because it is true that, our symptoms are like these perfectly orchestrated healing messages for us, and that the medical allopathic system, which is a form of sorcery. I know this sounds weird to people, but if you look at the etymology of pharmaceutical, and it goes back to pharmacia and pharmakos, and those terms actually mean, poisoner. They mean basically sorcerer. They mean human sacrifice. Literally, that's right. Comes from. And so, interestingly, people don't realize that when the allopathic system says, no, your symptoms are the disease, like, oh, don't have a fever. 102 is the new ground zero for the next global pandemic, and you're going to be responsible for killing 1 billion people. That's literally what they did, right? They weaponized our own healing symptoms against us as a form of biopolitical control within their, supranational biosecurity state complex, this new world order. It's all being done through your body. So the other side of it is realizing that actually your body is perfect, and outside of emergency medicine, you don't want to poison it. You don't want to suppress the symptoms, but hey, listen, if your body has a fever, you should have the care you need. You should probably be in bed resting, which you haven't done for years. That's why your body is actually forcing you to. And you should be happy that you have these intense acute symptoms, because people that have really chronic toxicity or fatigue can't even rally the symptom needed to heal themselves. So it's actually the opposite of what people think. It's a sign of resilience and fitness and strength to have certain acute symptoms. And that's just the physical. Then there's the psychospiritual and the emotional part, which is so many of us somaticize because that's how we get attention. Or let's say in a family group, you're the black sheep, and the only way you can actually express your parents' unmetabolized toxic emotions is through your own body. And then it's like all these weird things happen, So it's a spiritual journey is what I'm saying. And that, what you're bringing us to better comprehend, because your own life is an example of this, it reminds me a little bit of Michael Singer's surrender experiment, where by making these commitments, it could be one of the prayers I put out there sometimes, which I've learned I have to be very careful about, is let's manifest the highest possible timeline. But I used to do that, and then, oh my God, the worst possible stuff would happen. And then I'm like, okay, how about in the most easeful way possible? I started to qualify, because when you throw those prompts into the angelic intelligence of the universe, right, that's what I call AI, then you get delivered sometimes exactly what you're asking for. And that's true for our bodies or what's wrong in our lives, like financial challenges, relationship issues. It's a way of saying, hey, you really want to grow? You came in right now. The world is on the precipice of rebirth or absolute destruction. Welcome. And this is the accelerant that you needed. And by the way, a lot of people are like, I'm tapping out right now. And that's a perfectly fine option. There's going to be a ton of people that are leaving right now because it's not an easy time to be here. But then there's people like you and I that are actually kind of really excited about it. Like I'd say we have a lot to share now, and we're really excited about it, which is why this podcast is a great example. So, because once you really receive, you want to give. It's a natural human response. And the universe is so abundant, it has given us so much that you just want to keep giving it back, right? So that's the actualized wisdom you're referring to. And then the other side of it is not just speaking the words properly, but becoming living proof of it, because I've seen your transformation. I know that my own life, I should be probably, 8 feet under, but I'm still here kicking. So I'm living proof that these things work, if you commit yourself. So that feels good.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and exactly. I mean, we've been challenged. And when you know that you're facing death in the next 2 seconds for sure, and then you don't die, that tells you that you're here for a very powerful reason and purpose, because you're not allowed to be taken out. I have faced death in accidents and various different things. I won't even tell the stories to most people because they'll think I'm making it up. It was that severe. But going back to something as simple as getting a cold or a flu, how much do you feel so much better after you go through that whole purge? And so at least I knew that much. So as I started to go through the suffering process, and this is kind of funny, you'll get a kick out of this one. The very first person who I met who had the biggest impact on my health, who's in the health space, was none other than David Avocado Wolf. Right? So I met David. David was my first test because I was clean cut, groomed, dressed conservatively. He's like wild hair, zany as all get out, wearing a poncho, super organic, eating raw food, and and I got into juicing. And so I met a guy named Gino in Toronto, Gino DeSerio. He's another amazing guy. And he showed me how to grow wheatgrass and sunflower sprouts. And so that was like the first phase of, okay, let's see if Ian's going to actually do this, right? And so we start growing 10 trays a day we built up to of wheatgrass juice and 5 trays of sunflower sprouts. And have you ever done wheatgrass juice much?
Oh, yeah. I loved it. I mean, that's one of my favorite longevity promoting substances for sure.
Right. Well, so you have to build up. So you start out with 1 ounce because you can't, when you're that toxic as I was so full of toxic crap, 1 ounce was the max. Yeah. And then over the next week or two, you get to 2 ounces. And I built up to 8 ounces. Wow. I was literally drinking 8 ounces a day. Well, one Saturday, we got up and I thought I hadn't drank my 8 ounces. It was a busy morning. We were going to go move some stuff out of storage. I was with my oldest son, Anthony, to go do this. And I saw my 8 ounce glass on the counter. So I forgot to take my wheatgrass. So I drank it down and we went to the storage. It was only 15 minutes away. By the time we got to the storage, I started to get a fever and get totally delirious and sick like crazy. I'm like, why would this be happening? This is in 2007. No, this is in 2006. And I said to Anthony, I said, you got to take me home, like right now. He goes, why? He goes, I'm getting sick really fast. I don't know what's going on. So on the way home, the 15-minute drive, I realized that I had drank 2 of them because I remembered, oh no, I drank the first 8 ounces before in the morning and I drank it again. So I spent 48 hours from Saturday, that was Saturday morning, until Monday morning, going through absolute nightmare. I had a massively high fever, then I would be freezing cold, hot, and dragging myself to the toilet for 2 days without any food intake whatsoever. My wife was bringing me water. That's all I could get down. I wasn't vomiting, but I dumped, I don't know, like 30 toiletfuls full of the blackest, nastiest stuff, so badly stinking that I couldn't even stand it. And I thought I was going to die. I literally thought, if I knew that I was going to have to go through this, I probably would have wanted to die. I'm thinking that. Wow. Right. And so, but I had to keep going because I couldn't stop. It was too late. Yeah. This detergent was cleaning me out like massive stuff. All the inside stuff of my colon, all the stuff inside my body just kept coming out. I go like, how could I keep producing these massive bowel movements with no food for 2 days? And they didn't stop. And on the Monday morning, I finally fell asleep around 2 a.m. on the Monday morning, woke up at around 10. And I've never felt so much better from a contrast to where I was then. And that's where I realized, okay, that was totally worth it. If I had to go through it again, I would, but I wouldn't wish that on anyone. I don't do that, by the way. So, yeah, because you want to be gentle.
Well, that's such a great example of that. Life force is so intense and your body is so capable of somehow utilizing that to get rid of the opposite of what that life force is, which is pretty much morbid, death-promoting material. I actually went through a really profound healing experience when I was younger because I had psoriasis-like symptoms for several years when I was in college, and I didn't piece it together till later that my father, who is actually, interestingly, a pharmacologist, toxicologist, didn't think to have us wear any protective gear when we sanded the stairs of our home with all the lead paint and all the other stuff in the middle of the summer. So I had been given a shock of chemicals, and then it obviously caused a type of detoxification syndrome. Anyway, so I ended up picking up Bernard Jensen's tissue cleansing through bowel management, which in the middle has these like just very graphic pictures of what happens when leprosy-like psoriasis patients go and detoxify these like pounds of this impacted stool, this black tarry stuff. And it's a miracle. Within a matter of a few weeks, they're totally regenerated, even though nothing would touch the problem, no cortisone or antibiotics. And that gave me the insight I needed to realize that, at least for me, because I gotten to the point of toxicity, that it was that bad, my skin was being used as an organ of elimination, is that most conditions are really a form of being poisoned and your body not being able to keep up. And so that's something, of course, you talk to an allopathic expert and they're like, there's no such thing. And, you know, it's obscene to think you need to detoxify. It's just the gaslighting is next level. they've really tried to destroy this profound history of natural healing, which is what got us to be a species, to get us to the present century. And they pretend as if, like the basic principles of health aren't relevant. So anyway, so that's pretty cool that we both have had some pretty profound detoxification experiences. And for those who want to know the science, wheatgrass is one of the most profound of all substances, studied to do things like reverse lens opacity in the cataract model of, they use animals actually, and they give them wheatgrass, and it reverses the lens opacity in their eye. Mm-hmm. So I started to look into it, and it's really the fresh press that has this property. You could probably get a cold, sort of like freeze-dried version. But this is like miraculous, and it's just grass, It's very simple, just green stuff that the creator provides us, It's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's the barley grass and the sunflower sprouts, and you just got to make sure you don't have mold in them if you're growing them. We went through a whole process of learning that from Gino. He had it figured out, and so that was quite a deal. But you mentioned, like you go to the allopathic world. Well, the first thing we get is ridicule. That's the first stage. Abject ridicule. What are you, stupid? You're going down the garden path. Who do you think you are? You think you know something? You're going to be your own doctor, are you? Yeah, like fun you are. And then it goes from ridicule to violent opposition. It may be verbal violence. It could be physical violence. And then, as we kept going down the road, it becomes accepted. Why does it become accepted? Because we transition completely from total toxicity and disease-ridden, all the different problems, to all of that gone. So how is that even possible that is gone? And my oldest brother was a medical doctor for 30 years in North Bay. A super well-respected doctor, very, very intelligent guy, really cared about people for real. And he had a big practice. He had 11 doctors working for him there, but he was 100% allopathic. And so when this started happening, I called him up, because I would call him over the years, and he would always diagnose me over the phone properly and tell me to tell the doctor who I was talking to, like, for example, in Edmonton, what the problem was. And they would go, oh, no, that's not what it is. But my brother was always right. He was always right. And sure enough, it would take another year and a half or so, and they would go, well, actually, this is what you have. Like, I had a hiatal hernia. And he goes, my brother literally diagnosed me in 2 minutes over the phone, and it took them a year and a half to finally do the barium swallow test and the grossness of that whole thing. Say, yeah, you actually have hiatal hernia. Oh, thank you. My brother told me that a year and a half ago. So, but then when it came to this situation, I phoned him up and he goes, you have to do the operations. It's 100% genetic predisposition. He said, I've had literally thousands of patients through my clinic. Hundreds of them are mine. Every walk of life, every age, every body type, everything. He said, I've watched guys eat out of the dumpster and party their face off and live till 94. And I watched the other person eating organic and juicing and die at 35. It's all genetics. It's like, I told him, I said, that does not help me whatsoever. Because he pointed out that I look like my Uncle Don, who died at 51 of cancer. His older brother, my Uncle Bob, on my mom's side, died 2 days before him. They died 2 days apart in September 1978, both of cancer, and they both followed exactly the instructions of the doctors and died right on time. So I'm like, hold it, that doesn't actually work. Okay, guys, I'm 46 years old. We have 7 children. My youngest daughter is 6. Are you joking? There's no way that I could be taken out at this point. This can't be. No. So then so as soon as I started to go to the natural realm, he phoned my mom and he said, Ian's committing suicide, just so you know. Get ready for him to be departing. He's not going to make it. Because I would not do the surgery. I would not take any of the drugs. And I started doing all this natural stuff. And I went from 220 pounds down to 130 within 6 months. And I'm like a walking skeleton. My skin's all orange. My liver was completely messed up. It was totally compromised. Plus, I pounded all that terrible stuff through my body way too fast because I didn't know what I was doing, and I was being instructed by people who were pretty radical, but they were at a much higher level. Like David was super healthy. So was Gino. Here I show up, Mr. Toxicity plus, right? But nonetheless, I survived. So then he started to notice the big changes where I got better and better. So that was, 2004 all the way up to 2010. And so he said, well, you might be onto something. But he was unable to do anything that I shared with him. And by then I had abundance of things I was just giving to him for free. And he was going to sail his sailboat around the world. He prepared his boat for 5 years down in the Caribbean to sail it all the way around the world. And on November the 4th, 2010, he had got his boat through the Panama Canal to head to Fiji that next morning from below Panama City. When he woke up, he couldn't speak and he couldn't understand a word that his girlfriend was talking to him. And he went into a grand mal seizure, into a coma, and they rushed him to a Johns Hopkins hospital where they diagnosed him with the herpes simplex virus, whatever that is, that would normally show up as a cold sore up in the upper left control center of your brain for communications. That's why he couldn't talk or listen. Then the whole communications for his whole body shut down. Thankfully, they had some meds there. They put him in ICU for 3 weeks. He came out of that, and he survived. They say that 90% of the people are dead in 48 hours, but he made it. And he had to abort the trip, of course. He came home to Canada, and I went and saw him in the hospital because they kept him for 1 week observation in Hamilton. And I went down and I said, Doug, I've got this, and this. Deals with the herpes. It was like this crazy stuff that I had for him. And he just said to me, where's the double-blind, placebo-controlled randomized studies that proves that stuff works? And I said, Doug, if I would have waited for those things, I'd be dead. These are non-harmful. There's no scientific proof that I can say double-blind, placebo-controlled randomized study to satisfy you. Please just take this stuff. And he wouldn't do it because he was completely conditioned as a doctor to do only what the doctors were saying and definitely not what I was saying. And that was in December then. That was a month later, in December 2010. He showed up with a glioblastoma multiforme level 4 tumor in that exact place in his communication center. They put him on steroids for 3 days, opened him up, dug as much of it out as they could, did major brain damage, put him through radiation for 6 weeks, destroyed him to where he was like a little child. And he was dead on March 28th of 2011. It's like, what the heck was that? Whoa. So the very thing that he told me that I had to pay attention to, and the other thing that really upset me, when he was 48 years old, he and I were doing a little business together out in Alberta. I had a little staircase and he was investing in it, a staircase company. He told me, he goes, you know what? I'm not going to live past 60. I said, why would you say that? He goes, well, I just see everyone past 60 in my practices, they start to suffer. Their life sucks. I don't want that. I said, Doug, that's ridiculous. 60 years old is nothing. Yeah. He goes, oh, that's it. And so when he turned 60 and was in his 61st year, I was like, well, he was fine. It didn't come to pass. I thought, he's speaking that into reality. He was dead within a year.
That's a point. Exactly. I mean, there's a very famous now study from the New England Journal of Medicine that looked at Swedish patients who received diagnoses for, whatever test they had, say it was a mammogram, to determine whether or not they had so-called cancer or not. And this was based on over 500,000. So it was a pretty big study. And what they found was that those who were told that they were cancer positive, and that's not even accounting for overdiagnosis. So many of those actually didn't have cancer, but they were told they did. They found that they had up to 26.9-fold increased risk of heart-related death within 1 week of receiving the diagnosis. And for really, yeah, I know, right? Brain cancer was the highest. It was 26.9-fold increased risk. And it speaks to what happens in the modern medical situation where, you have these priests of the body with the white coats and you get anxiety or white coat hypertension just being in the same room with some of these folks. I mean, they're extremely toxic often because they have no concept of the types of things we're speaking to, which is that your body can heal from anything. And the rate limiting step is your belief. But of course, people outsource the permission to heal to these people in the white coats, the priests of the body. And depending on what they say or prognosticate, they're no different from, someone, an astrologer with a crystal ball. Actually, there's more science there that I shouldn't really disparage them, modern science, but they just say, okay, well, you chemo radiation, you have, 2 weeks to live, whatever. They project the outcome on you and you believe it because you've already, abdicated your self-healing. So that's part of the lesson, is that we have to be careful about who we seek advice from, because the moment you've already decided that they know better than yourself about your own body, like you said, you can speak it into existence. And the other side of it is a bit of a wild territory to be in, to say like you did. I mean, what a leap of faith and what an act of courage to say, I have this condition. I'm going to choose to see if my body can heal it. That's like, talk about courage. Until you experience it, you really can't know it the way that you can or I have, because I've overcome several different conditions in a similar way. But that's what we're now speaking the gospel, because from firsthand experience, we can say it is possible and it's truthful what we're saying. But those who are listening, who maybe are saddled with conditions that they don't feel that they can heal, the next step is, honestly, do you believe? That's number one. Okay. Hopefully they've listened to you and I and they believe it's possible. We're not lying. 2, are you willing? That has a lot to do with discipline and really thinking about or feeling out, do I have a will to live? Maybe not. Some of you are tired and, it's a legit thing. You can choose to leave. So look at that. But 3rd and most important is, do you deserve it? Meaning, are you worthy, right? Like, I think you opened this podcast up with that topic. It was profound, because that's the truth, is many of us don't realize this, but we've been so traumatized and so reflected inaccurate information about who we really are, the miracle that we are, or the beloved creation of a creator, that's what they need to visit with. And then once they do, and they've decided, and they've felt the worthiness, miracles unfold,
Right. I had a friend who he had 2 favorite sayings. He was a long-term mentor of mine, a fabulous individual. His name is Lee Vale. And he would say, it's live, die, sink, or swim, number 1. Right? Do you want to live and swim, or do you want to drown and die, sink and die? And he said, nothing feels as good as feeling good. And you literally have a God-given right to be healthy. I mean, if you even go into the Christian Bible, it says, be healthy and prosperous. That's a commandment that's spoken into you. And, well, okay, it's fine for me to tell you to be healthy and prosperous, but if I don't have the tools and the knowledge of how to actually do that to share with you, it's just a statement. But nonetheless, we're supposed to be here to be healthy and prosperous. Now, he died at 97 years old, and he lived a very, very powerful life all the way through to his last few weeks. And he actually wanted to go, and so he just laid down, stopped eating food. His wife had died 7 years before, who he loved desperately, had been with her for 60-some years before she passed. And he wanted to go. And I watched that. I was like, wow, he probably would have lived till 120, 130 fairly easily, but he actually wanted to go. And so that's fine, right? Like you said, that's an individual choice. But, then it goes into another gentleman who I met, who I personally feel, this is my personal opinion, people can have their own opinion, one of the most advanced doctors on this earth. He's a real doctor. He had gone to med school, got totally turned off with it. He then went into the chiropractic world, saw that it was much better, but kind of got turned off there too. But what he did is he just opened up his life to say, I am here to serve people. And he became so advanced in his knowledge in how to actually diagnose people and treat them from a natural standpoint. People were literally flying from around the world bidding for his time. And in a very short time, and he's only 48 years old right now, maybe he's turning 49, he had already had to go and start doing more deeper things rather than just one-on-one. He wanted to go 1 in 1,000, 1 in a million. And he did a speech, a seminar at this event I was at recently, Healing for the Ages, that you are aware of. His name is Dr. Brian Ardis, and it's Bryanardis. And it was one of the coolest presentations. He had it up in the slide. He had all the graphics around the lymphatic system. He said the lymphatic system has your major lymph glands. It has all the nodes. You have hundreds of nodes all the way through your system. He said your detoxification system will get plugged up, and it will start to process all these toxins through your lymphatic system. And so for women, because they have breasts, and we do as well, but not like them, those nodes are inside the breasts, and they will get swollen up because they got toxic, and then they will, maybe be stuck for a month or 2 months, and then they move it through. But as soon as a doctor sees a lump in the breast, they go, oh, we better do a lumpectomy, or we better do a mastectomy, or we better do a biopsy, or whatever. And he said the most misdiagnosed thing for women is breast cancer. He says they no more have breast cancer than fly a kite. They don't. But when they're told they do, then psychologically they start to manifest something that will kill them. And then they get surgery, and then they damage their bodies, and that damage turns into a manifestation of something that kills them. Yeah. It was like, wow, they like 95%, he's saying like an average 95% is misdiagnosis.
There's no greater example that I know of than breast cancer of the power of the nocebo effect. And when the body, when you have nothing but fear as a response to something happening in your own body, that's part of the detoxification cycle, it would literally grow to conform to that, expectation. And that is a very powerful example. I'm so glad that you brought that up, because many of the natural changes that are diagnosed as abnormal or deviations from a norm, it could be bone density for women, where they're using the so-called T-score, which compares the density of a 100-year-old woman's bones to, one at peak bone mass, let's say 25 or 30. That's called the Z-score. They should be using that. That takes account gender and ethnicity and other factors. But then what they've done is they've tried to pathologize disease and control the natural changes that occur. Could be dipping hormone levels or lower bone mineral density, and say, oh my Lord, you have a terrible disease, and we just happen to have the drug for you. And it's just a sad reality. But people are waking up, and ultimately the good news is that the body, when given the proper ingredients, and when we're not interfering with its self-healing, it will perform miracles for you every moment of the day. Trillions of events are happening right now in congruence with that. But the mind is so powerful, as you say, that's the one thing that we don't realize is we've been given a superpower, and you could call it a super weapon, which is our mind can manifest conditions, both positive and negative, that can override even the genetics of our body that might be optimized for wellness. And so that's childhood's end, as far as I'm concerned, is realizing that, yeah, that's true. And I would say the powers that be have engineered many hundreds of years of intentional misinformation around what we are, who we are, in order to co-opt this power and ultimately, obviously siphon that energy, to control the world. That's literally what's happened. So, but people are waking up. So when we own our power, when we realize that we can use it to literally regenerate and reverse biological age, then, the whole story changes, and I think that's where we're going.
Yeah, and you touched a very, very powerful nerve when you use the term nocebo, because it's infinitely more powerful than placebo. And placebo is so powerful. A placebo effect is extreme power. Nocebo, you must multiply times 1,000,000.
So I do think the primary way forward is to maintain, truthful information out there, right? Especially when it comes to your health, because our bodies are gone, then there's no activism, there's no truth, there's no future for our children. So, it's been amazing to behold all this.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you look at percentages. We're not going to shut the multi-billionaires who run the world down. We're not going to shut down the multi-trillionaires. We're not going to shut down the multi-quadrillionaires. They have their thing. It's in place. I have no interest in disturbing them or slowing them down because we can't. If you look at how many people do they say on the earth right now? Is it 8 billion?
I think so, yeah.
Have you counted them?
No.
Okay. But we're told that. Let's just take for an example. So if you have 1% of that population of 8 billion is 80 million people, that's 1%. How many people do you actually know who are wide awake, critical thinkers in our space, percentage-wise?
Wide awake? That's hard for me to assess. I don't know.
How many people are subscribing to you right now?
We have about 400,000 on our free newsletter. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and we're around the same place between social media and email lists and so on.
Yeah.
Okay. 1/80th of 1% is 1 million people. So when I hear people say, "Oh, I'm here to change the world," which world are you going to change? Which world? So which percentage? Like if you and I had to serve just 1 million people at 80 million people, investing $10 a day into their health for the things that they need to consume to supplement their diets that is not delivering, that's what? How much is that? 80 million times 10? $800 million in sales per day. Right, for 1%.
Yeah.
Who do you know doing sales at $800 million a day right now?
No. Yeah.
Okay. So ratio-wise, many are called, few are chosen. The people who are listening to this podcast right now are the few who are chosen. And they're chosen to take up the mantle, take responsibility for themselves, implement the actions and the reactions and the responses, and bring in the raw materials through the nutritional and elemental things to fuel their body and detoxify their body in order to keep it alive. So I always tell everyone to ask themselves one question, and it's kind of a two-part question. The first part is, and I'm going to ask myself right here, Ian, how much do you care about keeping your body alive? I can't answer that with words, and I can't answer it to you. I can only answer in actions and reactions. Number two, how much do I care about getting healthier just a little bit in every single category of every single part of my physical being, mental, emotional, spiritual, body, domestic, financial, and environmental? How much do I care about getting a little bit healthier in all those areas every single day going into the future? Again, I can't answer that with words. I can say, oh, I really care. Like, shut up. Prove it. Don't tell me. Show me. And so you ask yourself that question all the time. That's why you are where you are. And you always bring in things. You're one of the most open people I've ever met in my whole journey because you're well-rounded and looking at things from a holistic standpoint. And you're super open to discovery. And if you find something that's better, just like myself, we'll go to that next level.
Yeah.
It's like the rungs of a ladder.
It's true. We're pragmatic, ultra pragmatic. I use research as a guide. I mean, GreenMedInfo, actually, before the interview, I went on and I looked, and we have something like 1,400 articles on aging or longevity research. And there's some pretty cool examples there of things that a lot of them aren't even related to taking a supplement, right? They're just, 57 of them are just therapeutic actions like red light, yoga, tai chi, mindfulness training, horticultural therapy, which is gardening, music. It's really cool when you look at the things that we love, Ian, to do, and they're really human versus like strapping on some type of like, prosthetic, sort of like headgear. Humanity is going in a direction that doesn't look very human, in other words. And what I believe is that our humanity is actually divine, but because of the way in which we're projected images of ourselves, which are horrific, now it's become like a bad word. And the more we identify with that, you talk to children today, they're like, I don't want to have kids, humans are terrible. They're killing the planet. They're breathing, right? There's carbon dioxide there. It's just the narratives that predominate are so anti-human and so unloving. But the reality is that like the more human we get, the more basic the stuff it is we enjoy. mean, that's what's really going to get us into a longevity mindset where it's about the quality of one's life. It's about, I had a great conversation with Dennis Kucinich. She's become a really good friend of mine. He's actually running as an independent in Ohio, and he may be the only independent voting in a split house. So it's good that this guy cares about what we do. And when it comes to longevity, he literally seems to live in the present. Like that's his thing, but it enables him to go deep into the past and the future. And that's kind of where I'm at, is where I want to live in the present and not think about, necessarily living to be 70 or 80 or 100. And, live each day like it might not actually be possible to live tomorrow, like without freaking out, obviously. Mm-hmm. And to have that feeling of being full of life, like in order to generate that, Ian, I have to push myself sometimes to the limit. Like this morning, I'm going and working on a high interval training session because I wanted to show up today in the best way possible. And this young guy who's a hockey player who's like built like a tank is my first station is a 400-pound sled, and he keeps on throwing it at me. It's only a minute, right? But it's, oh my gosh. Mm-hmm. I have to push it back to him 10 times, and I'm almost dead. Like I feel like I'm going to die. But afterwards, because I did push myself responsibly, I feel so good. I feel like this 20-something-year-old. And the point is, and I've had injuries. I actually severed my right calf because I didn't use proper form. This was only a few months ago. I was in bed for a month. I didn't go see a doctor. I know it was like, even I was like, wait, this might not be a good idea. I can't even stand 2 weeks into this without excruciating pain. But I took arnica, I took bromelain, I did my meditation, I used red light. I just basically trusted my body. And after that month, I was able to stand on it and I was back to normal. And it was such an example. I'm not suggesting people do that at home, but when you do develop a relationship with your own body, like you and I have had to, it doesn't matter what the doctor says. You're still going to make your choice. You trust your own self. And that's what we've lost as a civilization, and that's what we're gaining. I've had my mentors too, people that have embodied healing or have known how to work with their bodies or mind, and they've helped me learn to heal. But ultimately, this is our responsibility, and it's a question of whether you care enough and really want to live in that body to its fullest extent, to be ecstatically engaged with life, right? To use this thing so that you realize, oh my Lord, I'm getting younger every day. That's an option. That's kind of a cool thing. And that's what gives us true hope and enthusiasm. And then that transmits to our children. And then suddenly all this intergenerational karma we keep passing down to them, it's almost like we're giving them a real inheritance, right? Which is a reason to live, right? A reason to want to have kids themselves. So, that's what I enjoy doing this type of work with you, is that, I could tell you're like me, you really are just doing the best you can with what we have. And we're not special. We're actually not special at all. We're just very gifted and grateful to have received, the healing we have, and we just want to share it. And I think that's a beautiful thing, Yeah.
And the thing you're talking to as well is the fact that when you get results from the things you're actually doing and you see profound change in a positive way, that gives you more enthusiasm. You go, actually, that works. The body does heal itself much quicker. It does repair back to its original blueprint. And wow, what else can we do? So it's this journey of what more things are there, and how can we make it simpler? Not more complicated. I don't want to do more things. I want to do less things with better, more profound results. So that's been the iteration over the last 20 years, is simplifying and clarifying. And what I will call, and I was told this, it's a signal-to-noise ratio. Because there's so much noise in the natural healing space. There's so much noise in the pharmaceutical world that the signal it just gets buried under static and noise. And then you don't see the results. Or you might put a Band-Aid on a symptom, but it's not the actual removal of the problem. Which then brings us to master keys, because master keys are those things that are the simplest, most effective. And when you get a master key, for example, for brain health, you don't need all those other 1,000 keys that people are talking about for brain health. You just have a healthier and healthier brain every single day. The brain in your head, the brain in your heart, the brain in your gut. So that's like a master key on that side of it. Or I could call it a master key. A master key is above the master keys, which makes it even simpler. But like, for example, your calf. If I was in Florida, I would have popped over and said, "Hey man, I got this little activator, Sayer, and we're gonna get this thing fixed in about a week."
Wow. Yeah, exactly. Something that's
But you have to have the technique and the knowledge because otherwise your body will heal like it did, right? And you did the arnica and you did the bromelain, you did all those things that you still do those, of course.
Yeah.
But when you release it, which is the classical Chinese medicine of the bioregenerative release, then all of a sudden your body just rapidly heals. I had a 39-year injury on my left knee that I did 8 5-minute treatments, and it totally healed my body healed my entire knee within 1 week. I was like, I went 39 years where I couldn't water ski or snow ski or do anything with my knee that would twist it. And now I can do whatever I want. I can do deep squats, I can twist, I can ski, I can do whatever I like. At 60, my 67th year right now. Just turned 66 in June. So what's with that? So we see these results. That is what inspires us and compels us to tell the world about it, because you can do it yourself. And what have you learned? I think one of the things you've shown me over the years was the vast majority of the things that people can do for themselves to support their body's ability to heal properly is free, money-wise. Costs a little bit of time, a little bit of effort, a little bit of energy, but no money because it's knowledge-based. And how much does it cost to slap your leg?
Absolutely free.
Yep.
It's self-care, exactly. Yeah, that's been my primary realization, is that it is true that there's nothing really that you have to buy or do outside of the most basic human things, really, and that they help. There's some great technologies out there that can accelerate, but our body is the ultimate technology, in our minds, right, in our hearts. And when we come into coherence, that's when, again, miracles unfold, but that can be in a default state too, where you're just living in perfection within your relatively imperfect form. But that is an option, that's definitely something where you actually don't really need a lot of the things that we think we do, even in the natural health world. So that's really a liberating discovery.
Right. And one of the other things I noticed, I was first told about you back in about 2013. And that was our affiliate manager, VJ Khalsa. Oh, yeah. And she goes, "Have you ever heard of SayerJi?" I go, "No." She goes, "Check him out." You were doing, I think you were the pioneer on the articles on black cumin seed oil.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I remember reporting on it.
Yeah. And so then I thought, okay, that's a really important one. How do we make that perfectly? Because I don't know how.
Oh, that's really before you actually made it. Interesting. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. I'd only ever heard of black cumin seed oil in around 2010, around there. But I didn't understand it at all. And so you had gone and showed all the studies and talked about it on a very common sense level. And over the years, starting in 2013, we were able to start to produce it. And we got better and better and better until now we produce the #1 highest quality black cumin seed oil on earth. And it goes all the way to the soil that is grown in India, to the farmer, the consciousness of the farmer. How does he harvest it? How does he, make it dry naturally? How does he package it? How do we press it so we don't damage it? So that was our job. I mean, I just went, okay, that's a really important one. That's a master key. It's literally a master key in the nutritional world.
That's amazing. I had no idea. Yeah, well, that's one of the many examples of longevity enhancing, hacks is really good cold pressed preserved oils, from things like even body care. Like, for example, I love the amaranth oil topically for my skin. I love the sea buckthorn. It's like just this golden, precious elixir. When you think about the types of things people are doing to paralyze and destroy nerves in their face with like botulinum toxin.
Oh, man.
When it's as simple as just feeding the skin what it loves, and so, that's one of the things I love about the simplicity of this approach.
If we wanted to do a campaign, I think we should campaign to have Botox illegal.
100%. Yeah, 1 kilogram can kill every human on the planet. It's the most toxic substance ever identified, like it's so-called natural. But it's absurd, and it's causing all types of cognitive and empathic issues because it messes with the mirror neurons, and it basically is preventing people from being fully human. So that's part of the problem.
So what we'll do is we will continue these conversations into the future. I'd love to have you back on the podcast many times, Sayer, because you've got so much wisdom to share. And we will, it's for everyone around us, and we don't want people following us. We want people following themselves, but we have to give them the knowledge that your job has been to go out in the world and learn. My job has been to go out in the world and learn. People should never have to pay for that because we earn the revenue and that enabled us to be able to afford to do these things. And now we're here to give it. Yeah. So it's a giving after giving and giving to give, not to give to get. So the more we give and the more people who are listening can give to their friends and the people they're affecting and influencing, impacting, the better the world's going to be. So I'm just very thankful for your time, your energy, your effort, all of your investment of all the things that you've done in your life to bring it to the table now. And I think that we're just getting started. It's going to be a really, really beautiful future.
Well, I just, I have such a great experience with you because, there's a lot of wisdom that you hold, and it's really more about letting the ego not be part of the conversation. I will say, when you say that people should follow themselves, that's a profound concept. And I totally agree, is that if you allow your body and the universe to deliver the perfect scenarios or information, once you've made that commitment, it will deliver what you need. And that's a very powerful actual spiritual message, which in the sort of natural new agey space, there's a lot of spiritual bypass and hand waving, but I see it in your life and I see it in what we're creating here, which is just guiding people to use common sense, to basically trust that their body has their back and that it is truly a miraculous technology. We just have to kind of get out of the way and let the miracle unfold. So thank you, Ian, for everything you're doing. This podcast is amazing. I know my people are going to love it because there is really no more interesting and positive topic today than longevity, considering everything we're up against. It's a constant focus for me on a daily basis. So I'm excited for everything you're going to be bringing into the world with the Master Keys, and I'd be greatly honored to return. So thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, well, that's good, though. Let's just get younger than yesterday and keep on keeping on.
Amen. Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Okay, everyone. Appreciate your time investing in yourselves by tuning in, and look forward to seeing you on many future podcasts.